spaces in between us. A gift for you my heart would bring, the sweet release of everything, the breath I take before I sing, the spaces in between us, trusting in what might arise without a thought preceding, as simple as a baby's sigh, resting and receiving. It's not what keeps our souls apart, but what connects and dreams us. The vast potential of the heart, the spaces in between us.
I offer what my heart has found, the silent love that's all around, a symphony without a sound, the spaces in between us. If I could give you more than this, let it be forever's kiss, mindful of my mindlessness, the spaces in between us. The silent love that's all around, the spaces in between us, the spaces in between us.
Nancy,
Yes,
it's your turn.
I know, but you've not allowed me to start my video yet. Here we go. Good morning. Welcome to our online worship service of Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Whoever you are, wherever you have come from, or whatever your comfort with digital technology, for this hour, we here are one gathered congregation and all are welcome. If you should experience a difference in volume, try turning up the sound on your personal device. My name is Nancy Sleight, and it occurred to me when I looked at the calendar that we've now been doing our online services for 6 months. I don't think any of us could have foreseen that when we first started this in March. But I do think, in spite of some technical difficulties from time to time, we're getting better and better. Our worship leader this morning, the Reverend Carol McKinley, is the Faith and Actions Minister at Olympia Unitarian Universalist Church in Olympia. We welcome Reverend McKinley to our virtual worship service and thank her for joining us. Now I'd like to welcome any visitors. Please introduce yourself in the chat box. We welcome more introduction with all during our after-service Zoom coffee hour. The link for our coffee hour will go into the chat box. You will need to use the password spaces to be admitted to the coffee hour. If you're phoning in today, welcome. If you want to join the coffee hour by phone, the number to call is 1-253-251-8782. The meeting ID is 438-451-134, and the password is 36194. The announcements are on our webpage, www.kuuf.org, or in our weekly email newsletter. But I do have one special announcement from Reverend Jessica. Next Sunday is our homecoming service, although this year I think it's being called a homestaying service. Reverend Jessica is putting together a selfie slideshow so that we can all see one another's faces. And she would love for everyone to send her a selfie or a family group photo at minister@kuuf.org.
We would like to start today by acknowledging that the land on which we all live is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish, the Sklallam, and the Skokomish people. They have lived in harmony with the lands and waters along Washington's Central Salish Sea for thousands of years. These tribes still live here and protect the lands and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised in the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855.
Our opening words today are by Amy Carroll Webb. We meet in the spaces between us. Stillness, music, words, heard or unheard. The apparent void teeming with you and the I that overlap in this one sacred living moment. We meet in the spaces between us. Welcome. It is good to be together in this space this morning. Let us say together the words for the lighting of our chalice as you light your chalice at home. We light this chalice, symbol of the flame that burns within each heart, the flame that kindles love, compassion, and justice, even when, and especially when, we are apart. It is a flame that grows, ready to be carried into the world. Please join in singing our opening hymn, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as visionless, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
Now it is time for our spoken affirmation. The words will appear on your screen. We gather as a caring community, seeking life's deeper meanings. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth in love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. Now it is time for our morning offering. If you would like to donate electronically, please click on the paypal.me link in the chat box. You may also send a check to the address on the screen. Please write in the memo line to which of the funds you wish your offering to go. If you use PayPal, please email admin@kuuf.org to let us know if your donation is for KUUF General Fund, the Minister's Discretionary Fund to help our members in need, or our monthly charitable giving recipient for the month of September, which is the Kitsap Mental Health Services. Rochelle Doan of Kitsap Mental Health Services will give a short presentation now.
My name is Rochelle Doan, and I'm with Kitsap Mental Health Services, and I just wanted to first of all thank you for inviting us to be present with you today. We have so much appreciated the generosity and the care that has been shown by the members of the Unitarian Church towards the people that we serve and towards our mission. I am here this morning to talk a little bit about where we are today. We still continue to serve about 6,500 people annually with our inpatient, our outpatient, and our residential services. And I'm sure many of you have read about the Pendleton Place, the soon-to-be built and constructed 72-unit housing, a permanent supported housing complex. We are so excited. We've been working on that since 2008, so it's really wonderful. Something else that we are working on right now is the creation of a fund for people who are uninsured and underinsured, because there's an expectation that we're going to start seeing a lot more people who've been impacted by COVID with some behavioral health needs that are significant, just in part due to unemployment, in part due to the anxiety and the uncertainty of these times. So that's sort of a new focus for us. I think that the continuation of the kind of the crisis triage, the Pacific Hope and Recovery, which is a 30-day substance use program, residential treatment program that we have, are new endeavors for us in the last year and a half that have been of great benefit to the people that we have been seeing, and particularly when they did not need the level of services at inpatient treatment. And the other things that I could tell you is that we continue to work closely with law enforcement, with the drug court, with behavioral health court, all of the kinds of potential intersections that we might have with people with serious mental illnesses or serious emotional disturbances. We also, and a lot of people aren't aware, run school programs. Madrona Day Treatment Program has now expanded since the last 5 years out into the Bremerton School District and even up into the Jefferson School District by a special contract. We have children coming from all districts in Kitsap County to receive services at Madrona, and then children at 2 Bremerton schools. So those are little things that people may not be aware of. We also have just instituted a new supported employment program, and that has been very exciting. You may hear more about that in the time to come. So thank you for having me here today. Really appreciate your invitation, and wishing you well.
Thank you, Rochelle. If this is your first time at KUUF, you are our guest, so there is no need to contribute. Let there now be an offering to strengthen and sustain our community, which is sacred to so many of us.
Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual works of love.
Hello from Fort Orchard. I'm Nathaniel. And I'm Jacob. And today we're reading the children's story.
Joelito's Big Decision by Anne Burlack. Joelito woke up to the smell of breakfast after a dreamy minute. He realized it was Friday, his favorite day. He loved Fridays because Mama and Papa took him and his sister Alma to McNann's for burgers. From his window, he could see the 12-foot-high plastic head of smiling Sam McMahon across the street. On their last trip to Los Angeles, he counted 15 giant smiling Sams. He supposed there were thousands of plastic McMahons across the planet. And at 3 o'clock, Joelito and his best friend Brandon waited outside the classroom for their sisters. Alma came out with Brandon's sister Kayla, who was crying. "Brandon, someone took your sister's backpack," said Alma. "We looked everywhere. I loved that backpack," Kayla said. "It was practically new." "Don't worry, Kayla," Joelito said. "There are others just like it at the store." "Joelito, you don't understand," Kayla replied. "I won't be getting another one for a very long time." That evening, Joelito was still thinking about Kayla's backpack. And once he left his backpack on the bus, and Papa took him to buy another one at the store the next day. At 6 o'clock, Joelito and Alma heard their parents coming home. "Ready to go?" Papa asked. "Ready," said Jolito. As they stepped outside, Papa pointed across the street. "Something is happening at McMahon's. Let's check it out." Jolito had never seen McMahon's parking lot so crowded. There were people of all ages and colors, and they were smiling at each other as if they were all friends. Many of them carried cardboard signs. Some signs said, "Low pay is not okay," or "Strike for 15. And on the rooftop, the plastic head of smiling Sam gazed down upon the scene. They could see that McMahon's was packed inside. No one was eating. They heard Mama calling, "Jolito and Alma, come here." But they kept moving toward the doors, and Mama called again, "Jolito and Alma." They turned around, and at that moment, they saw Brandon, Caleb, and their parents standing together, holding signs. Their mom and dad cooked burgers at McMahon's. They worked at a factory until it had closed down. Then the family moved from their house with a backyard into a one-bedroom apartment, and they had to give their dog Cookie away. Brandon still talked about how much he loved Cookie. "What's going on?" asked Jolito. Brandon's mom said, "We're picketing to let people know McMahon's doesn't pay us enough to support our families. We want $15 an hour, even though that's still not enough. We should earn enough so that we can pay our bills and go on a family vacation." Jolito thought about Kayla's missing backpack. No wonder she'd been so upset. He guessed Brandon's parents never came to soccer games because they had to work Saturdays. "Come stand with us and hold a sign," Brandon said. "Can't, sorry. Fridays we eat at McMahon's," Jolito replied. "Are you kidding?" said Brandon. "I thought you were my friend." "I am," said Jolito, surprised, "since kindergarten." "Well, if you cared about me and my mom and dad and the people they work with, you wouldn't eat dinner here tonight." Jolito could not think of what to say. "Why doesn't Aquila just pay the workers more?" Alma asked. Aquila, who used to babysit them, was a manager at McMahon's, and Dad answered, "Aquila doesn't decide how much to pay the workers. When someone buys a McMahon's burger anywhere on earth, a lot of that money goes into Mr. McMahon's bank account. He decides how much of that money to pay the workers and the managers and how much to keep for himself." A small crowd had gathered around, listening. Brandon's dad continued, "It's a math problem. One year, Sam McMahon was paid $9 million. I'd have to work 500 years to earn as much as Sam McMahon. As much as Sam McMahon earns in 1 year. Mr. McMahon's bank account is bursting, and we can't pay the rent. He has way more money than he needs because he pays the workers so little." A TV reporter held a microphone in front of Brandon's dad and asked, "Won't McMahon's have to charge more for hamburgers if they pay workers more?" His answers would be on TV later that night. Jolito's stomach growled. He glanced at McMahon's where the burgers were on the grill. They smelled so good. "Jolito," Mama said, "if we ate at McMahon's tonight, your grandparents would be so disappointed in us. When your uncles and I were young, we worked from dawn to dusk, picking grapes in the sizzling sun with pesticides and no bathrooms in the field. Picking grapes hardly paid enough to feed us, and we were always hungry. Demonstrated to be treated more fairly saved your grandparents' lives." "Okay," said Jolito. "Let's go to Power Burgers instead." "Can't eat there either," said Brandon. "The workers at Power Burgers are demonstrating too. Low-paid workers are demonstrating all over the world today." "Where can we eat?" asked Alma. Someone said, "Try the Casino on 18th Street. They have great food and the workers there are paid fairly. There's no Mr. McMahon getting rich from every time someone buys a burger there." "Sounds good to me," Mama said. The crowd was growing larger as men and women coming home from work joined in. "Let's go," said Papa. "You're the one who was so hungry." Jolito just stood there. He felt hungry in his belly, but he was feeling something else too. "I'm going to stay here with Brandon's family," he said. "Then I'm staying too," said Alma. "Take out for us and for Brandon's family as well?" The setting sun cast a shadow over smiling Sam McMahon's plastic head, transforming that smile into a frown. Jolito and Alma joined in, and Kayla handed each of them a sign. The crowd began to chant, Hey, hey, ho, ho, low wages have got to go. And Jolito began chanting too. He felt a new kind of joy as he realized all the people there were making history.
I gotta run. So that was today's children's story. Read by Grandma, acted out by me, Jacob, and Nathaniel.
See you again soon.
See you again soon.
So let's sing our song, This Little Light of Mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All around the universe. All around the universe, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the universe, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the universe, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Even when I'm home. Even when I'm home, I'm gonna let it shine. Even when I'm home, I'm gonna let it shine. Even when I'm home, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you all for singing. Thank you for singing with us.
Now it is time for our joys and sorrows. Though we are physically distanced from one another, our hearts and spirits remain connected. When we share together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows are lessened. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to put it in the chat this morning. Please set your chat setting to be all panelists and attendees. Bonner's joy. He's noticed only honeybees pollinating his flowers when he waters them. Hopefully an indicator that honeybee colony collapse disorder is not a thing here in Kitsap County. From Rowan, a joy that she moved into her new home in Bremerton. Wonderful, Rowan. Welcome to Bremerton. We're so glad you're here. From TJ, a joy that Lucy lost her third tooth this week and had a successful first week of first grade. Wow. Wonderful, Lucy. We're happy for you. Joey shared that his joy is that he has become involved with Resist 45 Bremerton and is working to help encourage voting. We are all needing to vote. And you can join UU the Vote coming up soon. Genevieve, Morgan and Nathan say that a sorrow that a seagull Genevieve saved during the rush hour on Tuesday did not make it. They had a comfortable passing at West Sound Wildlife Center. Thank you, Genevieve, for trying. And from Bill and Terry Looney, they have a joy. It's really fun to visit with Erin this week outside her group home. It's nice that you had a good time with your daughter. And Guy shares joy that his sister-in-law, Sharon, survived the hurricane in Louisiana with minimal damage. Bonner also has a joy for the expansion of worshiping at KUUF with the start of an evening Vesper service Wednesday, September 23rd at 7:30. And you can learn more about that as we get closer to that time. I'm sure there'll be information in the Candle, which is our weekly newsletter that comes out on Friday that I hope everybody reads. Thank you everyone for sharing. May you who shared this morning feel that the love of this community surrounding you and holding you close. Here's another one. A great joy to be the Called Ministry Task Force. And this is, oh, Lisa Johnson is saying she's got great joy for the Called Ministry Task Force, a committee that's looking into whether the church is ready to call Reverend Jessica to be our settled minister. May you who share this morning feel that love of this community surrounding you and holding you close. And for all those whose joys or sorrows are too tender to share, our hearts are with you. May the spirit of life and love bring peace to us all. Amen and blessed be. We will now sing Spirit of Life, followed by a moment of reflection. Brian Kenny will play Schumann's Träumerei following the moment of reflection.
Our first reading this morning is from Dharma Rain by Joanna Macy. Is it my imagination to think that we have been chosen to live at a time when the stakes are really high, at a time when everything we've ever learned about interconnectedness, about trust, about courage can be put to the test? Each of us is a gift the earth is giving to itself. Every anguish, betrayal, disappointment can help prepare us for the work of healing. If the world is to be healed through human efforts, I am convinced it will be by ordinary people. People whose love for this life is greater than their fear. People who can open to the web of life that has called us into being.
Kel, we can't hear you.
Margaret Wheatley, in her piece, Turning to One Another, writes, "There is no power greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what's possible, not what's wrong. Keep asking and notice what you care about. Assume that others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talk to. Be intrigued by the differences you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Invite in everybody who cares to work on what is possible. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert about something. Know that creative solutions come from new connections. And remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. Real listening always brings people closer together. Rely on human goodness. Stay together." Well, happy Labor Day weekend. This is the time we celebrate workers, but we also mark the unofficial end of summer. Now, no doubt events that we enjoyed with family and friends in the past won't be happening this year. The union picnics and other public gatherings have, of necessity, been canceled in the interest of public safety. And for our children, this year's return to school is also very different. Those new supplies that they previously arranged in a new backpack to begin their first day at school are probably arranged before a computer at home, ready to begin an online classroom. Yes, we're finding new ways of being together as we work to socialize and work. Last week, as I reflected on the meaning of Labor Day, I began to see some similarities between the struggle for workers' safety and rights and the struggles we face today in the midst of a pandemic. Labor Day reminds us that whether we are union members in a large company or whether we're the sole worker in our own small business, it reminds us that when we stand together, we have the power to make real positive changes for our families, our communities, and the country. The creation of a day to celebrate workers and their achievements originated during a very bleak time in this country's labor history. By the beginning of the 1800s, more than 100 years ago, the transition from an agricultural rural society to a more industrialized urban society begun. sped by the development of transcontinental railroad, the cotton gin, huge power looms, and of course, electricity. The move from land to city, from farm to factory grew, changing forever how Americans lived. At the height of the Industrial Revolution, by the late 1800s, the average American was working 12-hour days during 7-day weeks to eke out just a basic living. Now, despite restrictions by some states, children as young as 5 or 6 toiled in mills, factories, and mines, earning a fraction of their adult counterparts' wages. Women and men of all ages, particularly the very poor and recent immigrants, often face dangerous working conditions with restricted access to fresh air, sanitary facilities, and breaks. The labor unions had originated, and they were representing fat workers in factories, on railroads, and in the mines. And these unions grew and became more vocal. They organized strikes and protests to call for more humane working conditions, for worker safety, and also decent pay, which we heard about in today's children's story. Well, the workers and the unions faced fierce and often deadly resistance. Chicago's infamous Haymarket riot of 1886 resulted in the killing of police officers and workers. Less than 10 years later, the American Railroad Union, protesting wage cuts and the firing of union representatives, called for a boycott of all Pullman railway cars, and that crippled the railroad traffic all across the country. To break the Pullman strike, the federal government dispatched 12,000 troops to Chicago, and that unleashed a wave of riots that resulted in the deaths of more than a dozen workers. Of course, massive unrest spread across the country, and Congress, in an attempt to repair the relationship with all these American workers, passed an act making Labor Day a federal holiday. And in 1894, President Grover Cleveland signed it into law. Now, like all movements that challenge the status quo, the struggle for fairness, for respect for workers, did not evaporate with the creation of Labor Day. I hope we remember that the power and the responsibility to create a fair economy and a just society for all rests with each one of us. That we remember that for us to address problems, whether they're social, environmental, or economic, means that we recognize the humanity in others, and that as we do so, we continue to close those spaces between us. For the first time in many of our lives, we are much more aware of our personal and collective vulnerability. What seemed so predictable 7 months ago, that planned vacation, that business trip, that family reunion, has radically changed. Work, school, social life, economic security, even our physical well-being seem threatened today. And yet, we're not alone. Our personal experiences are echoed in the stories shared by friends and family members, and the stories of those impacted in our own communities. Now, some stories, especially hyper-alarmist posts on social media created by conspiracy theorists, can inspire a condition known as FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now, although new to me, that term FUD came about many years ago in the computer industry and was applied to messages from software firms about their competitors' products, messages that sought to undermine trust in rivals' products by introducing FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, about the safety of another company's software. Well, we have good reason to be especially vulnerable to FUD right now. As stories with little basis in fact or science are circulated, we are, after all, individually and collectively living outside our normal experience. Our families, our friends, and yes, our religious communities continue to learn how to navigate through unfamiliar landscape, and how each one of us navigates will depend upon our personal circumstances, our privileges, our support networks of family and community. Each one of us is called to do our part with resilience, creativity, and compassion. As Joanna Macy said in the earlier reading, everything we've ever learned about interconnectedness, about trust, about courage, can be put to the test in these days. Our resiliency is being challenged as we learn new technology, adapt to new ways to connect with others, as we expand our circle of care to include those in the larger community who are living with the effects of poverty, housing instability, racism, xenophobia. We must ensure that whatever bright future we strive for when we talk of the new normal is a future with space for all of us. Our 7 Unitarian Universalist principles serve every day as guides to how we can interact with others and the wider world, and I feel they are especially relevant right now. I see respect for the inherent worth and dignity of each person being lived when others step aside to maintain space between me and them during my afternoon walk. Or when one of us calls to check on that neighbor recovering from a bad summer cold. And this is what we are called to do, to care for each other, for our family members, and that stranger standing 6 feet ahead of us in the grocery checkout line, to live as best we can our responsibility to the common good, to the interdependent web of mutual obligation. Every day, I walk on the state capitol grounds in Olympia, as wide walkways and there are very few people there. The absence of people makes it an ideal spot for exercise. 3 weeks ago, a large number of demonstrators, many carrying weapons, gathered at the Capitol to protest Governor Inslee's stay-at-home order. Later, I studied newspaper photos of that event, and I saw Washington State Patrol troopers facing shouting protesters, risking exposure to the virus, even as they respected the protesters' right to demonstrate. The protesters' flagrant disregard for the welfare of others, including those standing right next to them, was a rejection of any obligation to the common good, any sense of responsibility to others. I believe that recognition of our unity and obligation to each other is not just a feeling. It is an active virtue. And each one of us transforms our actions into active virtue each time we act to care for others, living out our mutual obligation to each other and to our much wider world, even when that means we need to keep that safe space between us and to wear a face mask. Social distancing does not mean distancing from social concerns. Members of this fellowship gather in Port Orchard to bring public witness in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And you're meeting online to more deeply explore and understand the history of Indigenous people in this country and here in Kitsap County. And you continue to support with your contributions the Immigration Center. Some of you have shopped for others, dropping off needed items on porches of vulnerable friends and neighbors. Or perhaps you left a bouquet of summer flowers at a door to brighten or friend or even a stranger's day. Concern for the well-being of others lived out in everyday acts of generosity and compassion. And yes, we are physically distancing, but we're also working to close the spaces between us, strengthening social connection through concern for those and love we know and love, for those we have never met. Fred Rogers, whose kind, calming presence helps so many children face frightening events in the world, told this story from his own childhood. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." During these scary times, each of us, child or adult, needs to look for the helpers. And like you, I've found we don't need to look far. Now more than ever, we need to demand respect for the humanity of all people in the same way labor organizers brought people together to demand that workers be respected by providing safe conditions and fair pay. The way environmental action activists continue to work for the health of this planet. Now, a pandemic is not the way any of us want to heal the earth, but this moment helps provide us with a vision of what could be if we work together. Our opportunities to work together are endless to help make countless small changes that can yield large improvements in our Earth's sustainability and resilience. And join a prairie restoration group. After all, you can dig Scotch broom by yourself or at a safe distance from others. And from home, we can write letters, emails, and make phone calls to legislators to oppose easing vital environmental protections of groundwater, protections that affect our oceans and the air we breathe. I encourage us to think of what's possible. Find the helpers and join them. I also find it's helpful to remember that we are living the novel COVID-19 virus with every other person on this planet. Every other person on this planet. We are not alone as we move on to unfamiliar ground. Wendell Berry writes, "Always in the big woods, when you leave familiar ground and step off alone into a new place, there will be a little nagging of dread. It is the ancient fear of the unknown. And that is your first bond with the wilderness you are going into." As each one of us goes into the wilderness, as we face the unknown, we have the opportunity to hold on to our connections and to build new ones, even 6 feet away or on our computers. Recently, I reread James Baldwin's amazing essay, The Fire Next Time. Now, most of that essay is a painful portrayal of the Black experience in the United States as seen in Baldwin's recounting of his life growing up in Harlem, remembering the ugliness and despair that surrounded many in his community, the challenges they faced to achieve a measure of dignity and respect. But at the end, Baldwin reminds his reader of the human spirit, the promise in the lives of children. And he says, the question remains, what do we do with all this beauty? What do we do with all this beauty? Look and listen. See possibilities for us for all living beings, for the earth, possibilities rich with hope and ripe with opportunity. Possibilities to close the spaces between us. Amen. And so may it be.
Thank you, Carol. I invite you now to set an intention and choose your word for the week ahead. You may choose one word or 2 words or even 3 words. And if you feel called to, put them in the chat and I will read them aloud. Thank you. Create space. I am enough. Courage. Perseverance. Patience. And mediation. Enjoy the beauty around us. Resumption. Take back my time. Being intentional. Resist. Seek solution. Thank you all. Please join now in our closing hymn, I Know This Rose Will Open.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know, 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 I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear, I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear.
As our service comes to a close, extinguish the chalice with these words from the Reverend Kendall Gibbons. There is finally only one thing required of us, and that is to take life whole, the sunlight and the shadows together, to live the life that is given to us with courage and humor and truth. We have such a little moment out of the vastness of time for all our wondering and loving. Therefore, let there be no half-heartedness. Rather, let the soul be ardent in its pain, in its yearning, and in its praise. Amen. And let us go in peace. I invite you to join us for the coffee hour following the service. The link to the coffee hour is in the chat, and the password is the word spaces. So I hope to see you there. Thank you. And have a wonderful holiday.